Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Never Board of Trade podcast. We're back after we weren't really on summer hiatus. The summer felt like a different period,
Yeah, it did. It did. It
but
was. I mean, in terms of our event schedule, it felt like a hiatus.
felt like a hiatus, yeah,
Yeah.
in certain areas,
Yeah.
which I think in turn made it feel like we were on pseudo vacation for a
Yeah.
couple of
That's
months.
right.
But
That's right.
we're back. I'm Jaipaul,
I'm Vijay.
and thank you to our sponsor, the Brampton Honey Badgers, for bringing us back for
Yeah.
September. But we're officially back. It's the week back to school.
Back to school. That's right.
I don't know about you. You're still closer to that age than I am.
Yeah.
But for me, this still feels like the beginning of the year.
A
Like,
new year. Yeah.
more
That's
than
right.
Jan 1. I
Yeah.
feel like the Tuesday after Labor Day feels like the beginning
Spiritually,
of
the new year.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
So-
what are your New Year resolutions?
the year. Oh my gosh. Well, we just had a debrief about our summer with the rest
Yeah.
of our team, and I think definitely maybe a little more prudent in how grand I set my goals, or a little more realistic about how I set my timelines for summer projects.
Yeah.
We set out to do a lot this summer as a team.
Yeah.
And as I shared, I got through a lot of the priority ones, but it was a long list.
Yeah.
And I think so. Me being more realistic about time
Yeah.
is probably my biggest
Yeah.
resolution. As always, that's a perpetual resolution for me.
Less ambition.
How about you? Yeah, less ambition.
I don't know. I guess I really appreciated during the summer. I got to do real advocacy work, and not to say I don't do that normally, but you're juggling a lot of things throughout the year. And this summer, because it's a lighter event season, and with the addition of our Canada Summer Jobs student Hannah, we got to dream a little bit and be more tactical in our approach to advocacy. So we put together some really strong documents and strategies and plans around what we believe as an organization and how we're going to execute on that in the fall and the winter. So, yeah, I think my New Year's resolution is to execute on these goals.
I like that. Well, you're asking me to be less ambitious while you're simultaneously becoming more ambitious.
Yeah.
Feels like you're playing some kind of head game with me right now.
There you go. Yeah.
And then I guess welcome back to school too. We have some amazing partners here at the Board of Trade,
Yeah.
which includes a number of colleges and universities. So
Yeah.
to our friends at Algoma, Sheridan, TMU, University of Guelph Humber,
Yeah.
University of Waterloo, welcome back. Happy back to school for you all. And in particular, I guess, happy back to school or start of school for TMU's medical school.
That's
I was
right.
there at their ribbon cutting today,
Yeah.
and they brought on their first class of future doctors
Yeah.
being trained here in Brampton at the medical school, and had the opportunity to meet. We've met a number of people behind the school administratively, and even some of them who've been involved in the education side. But today, for the first time, I was in a room with people who had little name badges on
Yeah.
that said medical student,
Nice.
and that was I've tried to be as positive. I see a lot of upside, but like any major project, there's places where you're excited, places where you have reservations.
Yeah.
And I have some mixed feelings about what the medical school can and will accomplish. I think it's going to take some real effort.
Yeah.
But I will say this to our colleagues at TMU: congratulations, because
Yeah.
today felt like something really special
Huge.
to be in that building. And we've been there many times, the old Lester B. Pearson library building. And
Yeah.
I'm sad to see some of those institutional uses gone.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool to be inside that medical school and go, wow, we've got something here in Brampton that I think a lot of communities wish they would have had. And I think something in Brampton that a lot of communities would be surprised to know that Brampton has. And
Yeah,
it felt
yeah.
like something really cool today. So
Absolutely.
happy back to school, or first day of school for TMU's medical school today.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Cool.
Yeah, so that was great,
Mhm.
and I think you talked about the summer being a little bit slower for us. It's a slow event season because we know people go away.
Yeah.
But that's like true for most of our folks who we work with,
That's
other
right.
boards of trade, other chambers, other professional organizations, the city. Everyone kind of calms down event wise. But kind of like how when you go on vacation, the week before and the week after always feel like they're like so chaotic, because like all
Yeah.
the stuff you
Oh,
put
yeah.
off for that week with your out of office was on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, we just
Yeah.
had 2 weeks or 2 months rather, where we did nothing.
Yeah.
And now it feels like September is just jammed with events.
I feel like yesterday was this crazy, like everyone woke up and my phone was ringing off the hook, and emails, my inbox was full, and especially because I think we both just got back from vacations.
Yeah.
And I Air Canada delayed my flight significantly, so I got in at 4 in the morning, and then I was just like narcoleptic throughout the workday, and
And had to appear on a panel.
yeah, I had to appear on a panel. That's right, that's right, and it feels like everyone's back in motion. So yeah,
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
great. So we've got some fantastic stuff happening.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you're here in Brampton, part of the business community or otherwise,
yeah,
the city's got their annual food summit, which seems to grow every year,
yeah.
brings in all sorts of amazing attention
That's great.
to that sector. There's a number of community events. A great partner of ours, Y Media, has their annual awards gala
September
next
11th. Yep.
week. Revive has their
Yeah.
big gala next week. Big Brothers Big Sisters of York Peel
That's
has
amazing.
their big event
Yeah.
in a couple of weeks. So some really great stuff happening in the community,
Yeah.
and something I think coming up for us as well.
Yeah. Brampton in Motion on September 23rd.
Sounds cool. Tell me
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
yeah. So last year was our first Brampton in Motion symposium.
Yeah.
It's our big city building a conversation. We bring in folks, experts in housing and transportation, elected officials, various stakeholders, right, academia, what have you, to talk about the future of Brampton and the region. And this year I'm really looking to have this be an opportunity to dream a little bit, and in addition to the tactical sort of policy discussions that we'll inevitably have, like how can we make home building cheaper, and how can we build robust infrastructure and all of that. I also hope that we can dream a little bit and talk about what are the things that make cities truly livable, like arts and culture, and ensuring that there's space for small business and workforce housing and workforce development. All of these conversations that are very relevant to making cities thrive, and that'll take place on September 23rd, 9 to 5 p.m. at City Hall. And yeah, it's going to be a really interesting day, because not only we've confirmed Minister Rob Flack is providing a ministerial address in the morning.
It's the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
That's correct, yes. And we have some great keynotes. Jonathan English will be launching our white paper that we've been working on throughout the summer on transportation. So that's going to be great. But in addition to our panels, we have these really interesting breakout rooms as well. And we have a number of partners: Civic Action, Better Way Alliance, the Downtown Brampton BIA. They've agreed to facilitate some really targeted conversations and visioning around specific issues that are relevant to Brampton. So Civic Action, they came out with this really great report around workforce housing and the ways in which workers in the GTHA are being sort of squeezed out of the housing market.
Yeah.
They'll be running a session on that. Better Way Alliance, great organization that does a lot of work around commercial rent protection. So ensuring that it's not just big box, filling up our commercial properties, that we have space for small business and mom and pop shops. And then the Downtown Brampton BIA, great partner, and under the leadership of Lou Rose Mercader, they're really looking to sell the downtown,
Yeah.
and articulate the value add of investing in downtown Brampton, and with two-way all day go, the coming LRT,
Yeah.
the Queen Street Highway 7 BRT, a few different infrastructure projects. There's a real excitement around new property development, enabled by things like the Riverwalk.
And
project
I
as
think
well.
it's really timely. Like, funnily enough, I shared I was at this event earlier with TMU today,
Yeah.
and I ran into somebody who is a long time, and by long time I mean decades and decades, family business, like inherited, business in the downtown of Brampton,
Oh wow.
who no longer has that storefront.
Yeah.
Recently, because there's been some changes in the downtown, some storefronts have been moved, and buildings being repurposed as Algoma expands and the city's tearing down some buildings and so forth. So that was the time that the lease came up, and they shut down that business.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, have not reopened their business in the downtown of Brampton.
Oh wow.
They're operating out of their home. And when I was talking to the individual, they were quite clear to say, look, they still believe and want to have a storefront,
Yeah.
and still want to have the business that they had as recently as, I think, about 6 months ago, definitely within the last year. But they're reluctant, and this is not someone new. This is someone who has been part of downtown Brampton for, again, going back decades,
Wow.
who's been involved. If, offline, I'll tell you who it was.
Yeah,
And this is
yeah.
a person who who's been to many of the same meetings that you and I go to,
Yeah.
where we talk about, the future of Brampton,
Yeah.
been to many of these LRT debates and
Yeah,
things of this
yeah,
nature,
yeah.
and has said, look, I'm at the point now where I'm not prepared. I want to be in downtown Brampton, but I need to see something change,
Yeah.
because we've had the conversation around it's coming, it's just around the corner.
Yeah.
We're almost there. If only this,
Yeah.
for so long that even some of these true believers are starting to waver. And I think it's important to point out they're still committed to downtown Brampton, but they're not prepared to make that commitment in a financial way. Only in a philosophical or emotional way, but not in a financial way, until they see the change actually begin to take shape.
Fascinating.
And I think it's been interesting to see there has been some teardown.
Yeah.
I think the parking garage is going in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
The heritage block has already been starting to be dismantled. So I think there's real push to start. The boulevards have been redone. So kudos to the city for starting to make some of these things happen. But I think it's worth pointing out that conversations like what you're curating with Brampton in Motion,
Yeah.
in collaboration with Lou Rose about the downtown, this is the time,
Yeah.
because even those who are most steadfast are starting to waver. And I think we really need to demonstrate there's a plan,
Yeah.
and that plan, that the city right now, when they seem to be action oriented, is prepared to put that plan into motion.
Yeah.
In motion.
There you go.
And see where it could take us.
There you go.
If we can bring some of these businesses back.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Now, I'm curious. You used the term, I thought was interesting, to say, we're going to have these conversations around these sort of more policy driven matters. I'm using my words, not yours, but the word that you used was, we're going to dream a little bit.
Yeah.
And it kind of jumped out at me. I know we have other stuff we're going to talk about, but why do you think that this idea, and you described it well, this sort of place that's livable and workable, and people can walk around, and there's businesses, and why is that a dream still? Like, why is that not just like a thing we can do? Because a dream, and you're pretty careful with your words. I know you're trying to be specific in this particular case, but a dream implies something that is ephemeral, perhaps beyond one's reach. And why do we think about a livable downtown community in Brampton as a dream, not as a plan?
I think I use that term because sometimes, and I'm guilty of this because I work in policy, and my education's in policy and all of that. I think sometimes we can get bogged down by the technical. And what is possible, because we have to ensure that there is minimum clearing for this, and that height, height allowance and all of that. And sometimes that prevents us from looking past some of those technical requirements and dreaming, quite literally, thinking about, okay, if you don't have a degree in planning, if you're not a certified planner, what would you like to see in a city?
Sure.
And sometimes we policy people like myself, we lose sight of the sort of ideational visioning component of this. And I think what really started this train of thought is the 2040 visioning sessions that we had many years ago with Larry Beasley, and those sessions brought together stakeholders, residents, people who didn't have the backgrounds you and I might have, right? And it allowed folks to just kind of create a vision of what their city could look like, free from the constraints of a particular sort of paradigm that we use.
Unencumbered aspiration.
Exactly. Yeah. No, unencumbered by these sort of the business as usual, how things are usually done in this community, and frankly in this province. I think this day can be the day for these crazy, zany, bold ideas, right? Where we don't have to feel judged by the policy aficionados for saying, oh, actually, that's not possible because of X, Y, Z. I think that we need to move the needle and kind of change the Overton window, if you will, of what is possible. So when I say dream, what I mean is, let go of your inhibitions and just come up with the zany, crazy, bold ideas.
No, I love that, and I do believe that constraint is an important thing, because that's where creativity thrives, is when you know where the boundaries are. But I hear what you're saying. We talk about are we in the business of supporting businesses, or in the business of doing policy and community work? And I think they're the same in many ways. often because of the outcomes. But funnily enough, you're describing it in a way that they're similar also in process.
Yeah.
Because this is a business problem, and it's one that even in the business of the Board of Trade we
Yeah.
talk about in our team meetings sometimes.
Yeah.
Is that instinct that you talk about here of, well, here's how we do it. Here's what our systems allow us to do.
Yeah.
Here's what the CRM default settings are, and therefore we can't do a thing.
Yeah.
And me, I always want to push, like, I appreciate it, but let's just talk it through first.
Yeah.
Are we saying it can't be done because it literally can't be done, or are we saying it can't be done because we've just always done it the other way?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think it's very human nature to do what you're describing, which is to fall into the rules at the expense of having an aspiration, or in your case, a dream.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way of I appreciate you defining that, because I think it's important.
Absolutely.
Because what I never want to have be the narrative here is that idea of a functioning, livable, workable downtown is something that can't be achieved.
It can't be. No.
And that's more why I'm picking on your language. And I'm happy you're describing it the way you are. You're saying, let's think big and bold, not dreaming like it can't be done. It's missed. Once you open your eyes, it's gone.
No, not at all. I think I'm not using dream as sort of the antithesis of reality.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, what we can do is kind of be romantic.
Yeah, boldly and envisioned. I love it. No, that I'm all for.
Absolutely.
Let's be grand in our aspirations.
Yeah.
For, what's possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just one last comment on that event, which I'm really excited about, is you highlighted a number of individuals and organizations that are going to be part of this. I think what's really important in events like this, and I know we try to curate Board of Trade events in general, but I think you do a particularly good job with these more community building infrastructure related events, is that it really draws in. We always will focus on trying to showcase our members and the great thought leadership that comes about, and the great work that's being done in Brampton. And I know the program that you're putting together, there's going to be some amazing panelists. There's going to be some keynote speakers. There's going to be some presentations, all from people who reside in Brampton, work in Brampton, or are members or affiliated with the Board of Trade. But what you're also doing, which I think is super important, coming back to the dream comment, is a number of the people and organizations you cited are folks who live in other communities.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, because it's really easy, I think, to fall into some kind of myopia where we see Brampton problems only through a Brampton lens, and therefore only see Brampton potential Brampton solutions.
Yes.
I think for us to be at that dream level, we need to also be informed by, here's what someone did in some place that you may not even have heard of, that is so bold and so outrageous and so novel, that it changes the paradigm, but doable and achievable and had impact. And being informed by those types of perspectives is critical. So one of the things I'm so excited about with Brampton in Motion, because you achieved this last year as well, with some of the keynotes you had and speakers you had, is we had people from other communities or people who study the problem at a national level to say, well, you hear in Brampton that you're fussing over, everyone goes through this. That's okay. And by the way, a few people have already solved this. Here's the idea. And how do we pull these ideas into Brampton?
Absolutely.
And so that's why I'm super psyched for this event, is because I always love hearing about how problems have been solved in other communities, to see if there's some ideas that we can take and adapt into our context to make change happen here.
I think that's a big part of it. That's a big part of this event as well. I actually just came back from Vancouver. And
brag.
Yeah, and beautiful. The mountains were great. But they have TransLink over there.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty insane, eh?
It's cool. First of all, I love SkyTrains. Like, why would you build underground when you could build overground and you can see
when you have the views that they have as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
It's about having a train in the sky. It's another thing about having a train in the sky when you can see the ocean out of one window and a mountain at the other window.
I know. That's a good point. That's a good point. But what I really appreciate about TransLink is that I've shared this in the podcast with Jonathan. But what frustrates me about Ontario is that Toronto has the TTC, Brampton has Brampton Transit, Mississauga has My Way, York Region has their own transit. And we rarely work together. There are some exceptions with the subway TTC going into York Region, Vaughan, right, as an example. But for the most part, we kind of work in silos. Whereas with TransLink, it's the same transit agency that operates in Vancouver proper, as well as Coquitlam, as well as Burnaby, as well as Surrey, right? And that creates a lot of ease in connecting these sort of all of these separate municipalities together, right, and to the core. they have their own challenges as well, but I think that's such a like it's so refreshing to see. And yeah, anyway, I think if we were encumbered by our sort of siloized version of doing transit planning, we might say actually we can't go into another community
Sure.
because it's not our
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Well, there's an example in Vancouver or BC that shows the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's tremendous importance to hearing from people outside of your community and looking at best practices around the world.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And maybe that's a good segue
yeah,
into one of the things I want to talk about today.
yeah,
And that is, giving input and perspective and to decision makers.
yeah,
And you touched on, you use the summer to do some policy work,
yeah,
and we were really lucky organizationally, and I think you specifically, to have been able to have a fantastic summer intern
yeah,
that helped us out this year as well.
yeah,
And one of the areas in which you and Hannah put some time, and I thought was really impressive work that I want to start sharing with people,
yeah,
is what you did around the federal budget pre-submission.
yeah,
And for those who don't know, I think it's important that people be aware that this actually even exists. Is that when the provincial and federal budgets are produced, so when those governments, the ministries of finance in each of those jurisdictions, starts the process of building out the budget for the coming year, they engage in an exercise of input and stakeholder engagement.
yeah,
And some of that is very formalized. And like, as for instance, every January for the last few years, and I trust we'll have it again this coming year, the Ministry of Finance, from the Minister of Finance rather, at the provincial level, comes out to Brampton and engages directly with our membership. We've hosted Minister Bethlen Falvey for the last few years here for a Q&A and an opportunity for him to discuss what the province's priorities are, an opportunity for him to hear from Board of Trade membership, and then we submit a formal submission of the priorities that we believe that Brampton should be considered for when factoring in the budget for the year to come.
yeah,
The federal budget's not necessarily had that same level of grassroots engagement, which we understand. They're representing nationally.
yeah,
It's a lot more area
yeah,
to cover.
yeah,
But nonetheless, there is a process by which organizations and individuals can make a submission to the federal government to say, here are our areas of concern, and here are our areas of priority
yeah,
that we believe should be considered in the upcoming federal budget.
yeah,
So I just want to set that context.
yeah.
Quite frankly, because you're going to do a lot of the talking from this point forward. And that's really about what we did therefore to take advantage of that opportunity. And
Yeah.
please, if I didn't set the stage correctly, let me know. But I just want to make sure our listeners and viewers know sort of where we're coming from.
Yeah.
This wasn't something special for the Board of Trade.
No,
Every
no, no.
organization, every individual has the opportunity to do so.
Yes.
We were fortunate in that we've got great individuals like yourself and Hannah who had the capacity, bandwidth, and I guess that's redundant, the capacity and the insight to know how to reach out and connect it with our members to pull together some recommendations that we feel really move the needle for Brampton
Yeah.
in ways that are important with our values and priorities at the Board of Trade,
Yeah.
based on the information that our members have told us about.
Yeah.
And you've done an amazing job. We made 5 recommendations that went in last week.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to take some time to talk
Yeah.
about some of these big themes, what the recommendations are and what they meant,
Yeah.
and just give people an opportunity to engage and help them understand how we are part of this process. Because I think it's equal parts the recommendations, but a lot of the importance of, I think, what we're talking about now is how we're getting people involved and how we're making sure our members, but how we want more of our community involved in exercises like this. We don't just have the opportunity. I think our most important opportunity to shape policy and the direction in which our city, province, country is going is when we vote. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of things that happen in between elections where we get the opportunity to have our voices heard. And I
Yeah.
don't know that most of us
Yeah.
know or take advantage of those. And this, I think, was a really important one for us at the Board of Trade.
Absolutely. No, that's a great context
Yeah.
setting, and I'm really proud of this document. And I want to thank Hannah as well, our summer intern, for helping me put this together. And this required a lot of research, obviously, but in addition to that, as you've alluded to, um, this is also co-created by many of our number one members, our Policy and Government Relations Committee specifically, but also some of our partners that we've met over the past year, who do work that intersects with our work. And our philosophy at the Board of Trade is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can support each other's advocacy. And frankly, there's a strategic element to this as well, because if the federal government is receiving, thousands and thousands and thousands of submissions, right? The recommendations they're going to pay most attention to they're probably going to be the ones that show up the most amount of times. So there's strategic importance to sort of borrowing from each other as well. But aside from that, obviously process is important, right? So ensuring that everything we do is driven by stakeholder engagement. Ultimately, Brampton in Motion, all these events that we do is largely driven by our big stakeholder engagement survey, the BCI Business Confidence Index. We take a look at the top business concerns, and we do programming and advocacy around that. So that's a big driver of the work that I prioritize. And this pre-budget submission is no different. But aside from all of that, there's a tremendous amount of research that needs to go into it, looking at other policy recommendations throughout the year, what the sort of evolution of some of these issues have been within legislatures, what is federal jurisdiction, what is provincial versus municipal. That's a big one as well. And so in terms of process, what we did is Hannah and I put our heads together and sort of we kind of created this litany of policy recommendations that we thought were relevant to the priorities that were ultimately defined by our stakeholder engagement. We then went to our Policy and Government Relations Committee, as well as a number of our key members who work on some of these issues, relating to housing, transit, and immigration, broadly speaking, to get their solicit feedback from them, as well as understand what they're advocating for. And then we also worked with some of our partners who aren't our members, but they are organizations that we've either partnered with in some capacity, or they're doing work that complements our work and vice versa. And we got a sense of what they were advocating for. So a lot of eyes have seen this pre-budget submission, and a lot of input has been taken into consideration. And so as a result, we have 5 recommendations, as you pointed out. The first is around, it's for those who've been listening, these are not necessarily unfamiliar to us. So we've advocated for them in other spaces, other venues and platforms. But the first is a recommendation that we've shared with the Ontario Chamber of Commerce at their AGM, assisting Canadian municipalities with growth-related challenges with reallocated taxes. So in the provincial context, in the OCC context, we are argued in favor of land transfer tax being redirected to municipalities. And that's provincially collected land transfer tax. We're not talking about the municipal land transfer tax that Toronto collects, but we're talking about the provincial one. In the federal context, right, there's no land transfer tax that goes to the feds. So in this context, we're looking at the goods and services tax, the GST. So the reason why we're advocating for this is because this is something that has been talked about at our Brampton City Council. It has been talked about by folks at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And, this speaks to buttressing and strengthening the fiscal capacity of municipalities to invest in things like infrastructure and growth-related challenges, population-related challenges. So, we've talked at length about the ways in which services and infrastructure have been downloaded onto municipalities. This is helping them sort of meet those challenges.
Is this also, just to get in there, just because I know other things we've talked about, is when it comes to the conversation around affordable housing, one of the mechanisms that a lot of municipalities use is that of DCs. And waiving in some cases, deferring in other cases, the collection of these development charges that cities collect from developers that are used for these infrastructure pieces. Is among the reasons that this recommendation goes forward is not just specifically to allocate in these areas, but then to give the municipalities more tools that they can use in theory then to create offsets in other places to help with more affordable development. Is that a reasonable thing to say?
That is correct. Thank you for that reminder. Development charges, as we've heard, can constitute about a quarter of the cost of new housing. And we understand that municipalities are in a position where growth-related infrastructure costs require financing at different levels, and
to be clear, this is the basics. This is like the road, the sewers. This is not the exotic stuff. This is like what you need to have a functioning neighborhood.
That's right. So the reallocated taxes would help alleviate some of those pressures. Recommendation number 2. So we were very excited to have both the provincial and the federal governments announce funding for, rather I'd say, support for the LRT extension into downtown Brampton, the Hazel McCallion LRT extension into downtown Brampton, the tunneled extension specifically, which was a priority of this council.
Yep.
However, we want to ensure that we are given a specific dollar amount, that is publicized information, and that there's specific conditionality for this funding. We understand that the mechanism by which we were receiving this money is through the Canada Public Transit Fund. We understand that there are certain housing development targets that are associated with this funding. What we're ultimately advocating for is we want to know what those requirements are.
Sure.
So we can get started on this project.
That's right.
Recommendation number 3. So this relates to our housing advocacy, and this is a kind of a challenging one, just because housing is so much of a provincial priority, and in recent decades a municipal priority. But to the extent that the federal government is involved in this, is really around their cooperative housing program, which, as we remember from our Moving the Needle event with Civic Action in March, formally ceased in the mid-90s. And what we're looking to see is a continuation of the historic reinvestment we saw in 2024 of about $1.5 billion in the cooperative housing program at the federal level. We want to see this project continue in perpetuity, and additional investment in that program. We also want to see some reforms to community-owned real estate to allow for folks, residents, to invest in community-driven investments. Right now, many of those community bonds and impact-related investments are taxed as income.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not taxed like every other sort of investment.
There's not an incentive to make this type of investment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And for this one, I just want to specifically call out the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada for helping us draft this language, as well as Better Way Alliance and Tapestry Capital, the Canadian Coalition of community-owned real estate. I will correct that if I'm misremembering, but I want to thank Tapestry and Better Way Alliance for helping us with that language as well.
And I just want to highlight on this particular recommendation, because I really like this one a lot for a few reasons. But one of them is, again, just coming back to comment earlier, where does advocacy and more economic development oriented functions of a board of trade begin?
Yeah.
And this is something that we talk about a lot. I know you and I have to consider, like, where's that line? And I think for both of us, it's very gray. These overlap.
Yeah.
And to me, this is an excellent recommendation, because it really highlights this piece. We're talking about a change in policy, gives more people the opportunity to engage into the housing market, gives more people the opportunity to invest. It gives more opportunity to individuals who may be experiencing challenges with housing security because of the difficulties in affordability.
Yeah.
So we're addressing a whole bunch of needs that are social. We're addressing a whole bunch of needs that we know have spillover effects into areas like people's suitability to hold a job or experience mental health issues. These are real things that affect quality of life for a lot of people. It's giving people the opportunity to build wealth and equity through their investment component of it.
Yes.
Yet all of this is fundamentally pro-business, because someone still has to build these houses.
Exactly.
Someone still has to service these houses.
Yeah.
Someone still has to build the fixturing and the appliances and the furniture that goes into these houses. And I love this particular recommendation so much.
Yeah.
Because to me, this is the perfect case study in how you can be advocating for something that is good for people, but it still be really pro-business.
Yes.
And I think there's a false sense sometimes in the sector that we're in that you have to make a pick.
Yeah.
And I see sometimes at other boards of trades, it feels like they have made their pick and they have cast their lot with business.
Yeah.
And I don't think to me, that's a false choice. I don't think it's this easy and clear in every subject, but I don't think it's binary either. And I just wanted to highlight this piece, because this is like a personal thing for me.
Totally.
Is that we can advocate for things that are good for people and still be very pro-business in doing so.
And you know what? At this panel that you referenced earlier that I was at yesterday, that was I mentioned that very point to the crowd, and that was a sticking point. That sort of people came back to that, and were quite pleasantly surprised that the business community is in fact part of the larger
Yeah.
community. And the example I cited, and I've cited this before, is when we do our business confidence index survey and we ask what are the top concerns for your
Yeah.
business, the top answers typically circle public transit, cost of living, specifically affordable
Yeah.
housing, and immigration or labor, skilled labor.
And in fact, not even typically. It's always those.
Yeah.
The only thing that changes seems to be the order. But it's
Exactly.
always those top three.
Yeah. It's not deregulation.
Yeah.
It isn't, taxes are too high.
The cost of electricity, the whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that,
And those are all still real things.
yeah, very much so. And that was really kind of impactful to me when I saw those results,
Yeah.
because it really drove home this point that I think sometimes there's this perception that the business sector or the corporate sort of lobbyists are have a hold over the business community, and there are rooms of sort of conniving high net worth C-suite individuals who are sort of representing this.
By the way,
sector.
I would love to be invited to one of those rooms.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, absolutely.
The Scrooge McDuck swimming in gold coins room.
Exactly. No, but at least in this community, I'll say that the business community is very socially oriented, and every enterprise is a social enterprise in a way.
I think so. But I do feel compelled to keep saying this in the way that you're describing yesterday, because I have made that similar point on various panels as well, including when we were at the OCC AGM earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it always surprises me for how many people that still feels like an aha statement or a statement of some controversy.
Yes.
And so until that feels like when I'm saying it and I was like, well, and shrugs, then I think I'm going to keep saying it. Because I feel like I'm still opening people's eyes to this idea that we can be an organization that is focused on our community, and we're bringing the business community along with us. In fact, to your point with the BCI, the business community is actually driving this dialogue. It's not us being out of lockstep.
No.
We are in fact doing exactly what we're advocating for exactly what our members want us to advocate for.
Yes.
Recognizing it serves them. They get it. Businesses are smarter than I think people give them credit
Absolutely.
for.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to distract.
No,
I just think it's a really important thing to underscore there.
Yeah, I agree. Recommendation number 4. So this one's a fun one because for those who've been following along, one of my first Around the Corner videos was about VIA HFR, now called Alto, right? Now designated as the Alto project. So with this one, we've spoken to folks who are part of that project, staff there, and we've asked the question of, this is great, this connection to Toronto and Quebec City, high-speed connection, fantastic for our nation, and it's a nation building project, all of that. Where's the Brampton stop, essentially? And I think there's a real opportunity, there's a real case to be made, and you'll see in the transportation white paper that we'll be launching that we make the case for Brampton stop. But the larger point is, we have to extend westward from Toronto. And
right now, just to bring everyone up to speed, the plan is Toronto eastward to Quebec City.
Yes.
And with no further expansion beyond there. The original plan was an HFR, so higher frequency, which they've now updated to HSR, so including higher speeds, which I believe is the 200 kilometers an hour. Is that basically the line that makes it HSR?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think like this. I think there are areas where it's 300 kilometers for this one, but
very fast trains, like at European scale in terms of speed. Something we've not typically seen not often in North America and not at all in Canada. But so I'm just providing some context. So what are we advocating for here is to go westward, because at present the project does not envision a rail line that goes west of Toronto.
So our big recommendation here is to designate Alto, the high-speed project, as a national interest project. So for those, again, who've been following along, Bill C5 includes this provision around projects of national interest, as a sort of response to the protectionism down south. We believe that Alto is a national interest project and should be designated as such according to C5.
Which means it expedites its planning and execution both.
Absolutely, yes. And we also want to see the expansion of this project to include, to Jaipaul's point, the entire Windsor Quebec City via corridor. So that's important. Also with the Brampton stop. And just to give folks a sneak preview of what we'll be arguing for is If we look at Toronto and in particular the Union Station via stop, it's in a very dense metropolitan area. You will have to slow down the train significantly
Yeah.
To accommodate that. If we envision a stop on the outskirts of Toronto, specifically in a community like Brampton, where there is some industrial and some greenfield space still available, we can maintain higher speeds and ensure that this project is as efficient as it can be. So
yeah, and again, not to step on the white paper,
Yeah.
but so we won't get into the detail
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
but just as an analogous, because it's kind of the jumping off point, and you can look forward to the white paper in a few weeks
Yeah.
where we detail the how.
Yeah.
But Toronto's airport is not in Toronto. Toronto Pearson exists
That's
in the
exactly
905.
right. That's exactly
and
right.
and it's really in many ways it's situated in technically in Mississauga.
Yes.
In many ways, it's actually Brampton's airport
Yeah.
in terms of the businesses that support it and the people who work there.
Yeah.
So the precedent of something that is Toronto in name and servicing the GTA not being in the core itself
Yeah.
has already been established.
Yes.
And I won't get further ahead because there's lots
Yes.
of cool stuff about that.
Yeah.
But I just want to share for the listeners and the viewers that we're not completely crazy here when we're suggesting a stop in Brampton
Yeah.
to service the GTA. It's already being done in another modality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And then the last recommendation, and just to clarify, all of these recommendations, it's not that we're making 5 policy recommendations. We're making 5 thematic recommendations, and within these recommendations, we have specific policy proposals that we're including. And the last one, which is a big one, is strengthening Canada's temporary foreign worker programs and improving foreign worker protections. This has sort of been, for me personally, a policy area that I've struggled to really understand and not understand, but more so provide tangible advocacy for.
It's complicated.
It is complicated. There are a lot of dimensions to this,
Yeah.
and there's this piece around the implication on post-secondary, the implication on the sort of suppressive effect on wages, with things like the labor market impact assessment and temporary foreign workers and all that. But there are also real concerns from businesses that are rely on foreign workers to meet very real labor demands.
Yeah.
And so this required a lot of research, and again, thanking Hannah for this, but also a lot of consultation from many of our members.
Yeah, we had some good people step up to help us with this
Absolutely,
one.
Absolutely. And there are a number of recommendations that we make. Some include developing a pre-departure information package for foreign workers, so they know what their rights are in this country as workers, as foreign workers. Providing guidance on adapting to new environments, subsidized language and cultural competency training. Revising the labor market impact assessment process. So this is a program that allows a business who can demonstrate that there is not enough domestic talent.
Labor pool. Yeah, labor pool is not sufficient
to meet certain specialized requirements for their jobs. If they're in a catchment area, a census metropolitan area that has an unemployment rate of lower than 6%, they can actually apply for this labor market impact assessment and essentially offer the role to a temporary foreign worker.
Right.
And
I think you need to go into this one a little bit more, because that's a lot. And I know for a lot of folks, for me, the first time I heard about this, it's counterintuitive. So particularly around the unemployment rate.
Okay.
And so I just want to make sure folks are following along. So what we're saying is that when the unemployment rate is low, meaning that in theory then the labor pool is too small for that business.
Yeah, it's too tight
to recruit.
That's right.
That is when a business can qualify for this. So
That's
just
right.
to be clear, right?
Yes.
So this is an employer saying there's just not enough people that are hireable in my community, as demonstrated by the unemployment numbers in my community.
That's right.
Just want to make sure we're clear on that, just because I know this is a tricky one for folks to follow along.
I appreciate that.
Get into acronyms and jargon, right?
You're right. No, that's exactly right. Thank you for that. Essentially, yes, if the labor pool is tight, it's small, they can offer the role to a temporary foreign worker.
Right.
Now, what we've suggested in this pre-budget submission are some reforms to that program. For example, Brampton is part of the Toronto Census Metropolitan Area, the Toronto CMA. Toronto's massive. and the unemployment rate might not necessarily be reflective of a community, a constituent community like
Yeah.
Brampton in the broader census
Yeah.
metropolitan
Yeah.
area.
Unemployment in Scarborough is not the same as unemployment in Brampton. It's not the same as unemployment in the
Exactly.
core. That's
Exactly.
right.
Exactly. And in addition to that, unemployment is a broad metric.
Yeah.
This ignores the specific nuances of
Sector.
sectors
That's right.
themselves, like hospitality, for example, which is very reliant on foreign labor. So some reforms to how those that process looks, making it more sector specific and being more tailored to specific communities as opposed to an entire
Yeah.
census metropolitan area. There's also this joining the call. Recommendation is joining the call made by the Canada Employment Insurance Commission, and expanding our bilateral labor agreements beyond seasonal agricultural
Yeah.
work. So, as we are probably aware, agriculture in this country relies a lot on temporary foreign workers, and specifically from countries like Mexico and the Caribbean.
Yeah.
There is
South America broadly, I think, as well.
yeah. No, absolutely. Now, this is actually a very effective model,
Yeah.
right? The what's called the seasonal agricultural worker program.
That's right.
Now, what this commission has put forward is essentially replicating that for other sectors where we have shortages, like in healthcare, construction, technology, and manufacturing, and looking at creating this bilateral relationship on labor with other countries, like India, as an example, and other countries. And then ensuring so in addition to all of these recommendations, ensuring that bad actors are properly penalized for their own sort of transgression of the law, right? So establishing a specialized CBSA unit that is dedicated to investigating and prosecuting unregistered immigration consultants and recruiters, and clear messaging as well on how individuals can report these individuals to law enforcement. Right. So we've heard and we've seen the news stories about immigration consultants, preying on desperate international students
who pay huge fees.
Exactly, massive fees, and we've heard about these fraudulent papers and admission letters and things like that. And unfortunately, there isn't a clear sort of process for prosecuting these individuals,
nor the bandwidth to properly investigate, is what we hear as part of that as well.
That's right.
So this is all, and I appreciate you getting into detail here, because what you're clearly saying here, which I think is important to note, is that we're acknowledging that the program that we have right now to facilitate temporary foreign workers, or individuals, quite frankly, in this particular case, it's temporary foreign workers, but in general, newcomers coming to Canada and finding employment, is not working as well as it should.
No.
And so our recommendations, to your point, we talked about themes and we talked about recommendations. And our recommendations are around ways in which to reform this process in order to better set up individuals for success, and in order to better identify bad actors. And I think it's important to say, because where I'm going with this is then, so we're on September 3rd today. Earlier today, Pierre Poilievre made comments around scrapping the temporary foreign worker program altogether, because he felt it was not working well. And not only not working well, I'm grossly understating his point of view, I think you would say. It's broken. And that this approach to be done away with altogether. And in particular, what he had focused on is when people are critical of internationals coming into Canada to work, is that, and you touched on it, among the potential side effects of that is that it can be suppressive on wages. That because individuals who come from abroad are not aware of their rights, and because they're coming in situations where the financial needs are maybe more desperate because they don't have the infrastructure, social safety net, et cetera, around them, they may be working for less or under the table or whatever the case may be. And that he's alleging that, this is really, quite frankly, and to Poilievre's credit, he does state this part. This is not the workers' fault. These are employers exploiting this desperation and exploiting this ignorance to pay these individuals less. But what it has overall is a suppressive effect on wages. And what it has overall, therefore, in his mind as well, is it reduces employment opportunities for those who are born here in Canada. And so as a result, this is what he's hanging this on. I will challenge the integrity of that statement. Does he
Yeah.
actually believe that or not? I
Yeah.
think this feels a little bit like of a dog whistle
Yes.
argument that he's making.
Mhm.
But I do think it's interesting that as we're talking about this, you have the leader of the opposition saying this program is broken. We need to do away with it all because we need to protect Canadians.
Yeah.
And I just love to hear your thought on this. We're talking about some reforms. He's talking about throwing it all away.
Yeah.
Like, where do you stand on this piece?
Well, I'll say, I think we should email this to Mr. Poilievsky and just gently remind him that if something isn't working the best that it can, it doesn't necessarily mean we should throw this away.
Yeah.
We can reform this program because it is a good the specific programs that he's referring to, because there are a few
He conflated a few.
Conflated a few.
And to his credit, I didn't hear his comments. I read the article reporting his comments.
Yes.
But in that article, they certainly conflated a few programs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But these are designed to be helpful to the Canadian economy. And I think what we need to prioritize is ensuring that this isn't just a check mark type of program, that the checks and balances are in place to ensure that employers cannot misuse these programs and get away with paying a lower wage, and looking at reforms to make this a more effective program.
Yeah.
I worry that if we get rid of this wholesale, that there are going to be sectors and employers who say, well, I might have to close up shop because
no, will have. We talk to those businesses here in Brampton.
Exactly.
We deal with this on a daily basis.
Yes.
We know that if this program goes well, I'll come out stronger than you on this. There are businesses here who will cease to exist.
Yeah.
Because and this has nothing to do with wages. This has everything to do with skills.
Exactly.
We simply do not have at this point, and this is a solvable problem.
Yeah.
But we do not have at this point the skilled labor base to fill jobs in manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. And we do not have the skill base here in healthcare to fulfill these roles.
Absolutely.
So if we're not inviting people to come from abroad and work in these jobs, not only are these businesses a threat from going under, our healthcare system, which is our Canadian identity for many of us,
absolutely
is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And again, this is solvable, but you can't train a generation of PSWs, nurses, millwrights, what have you, overnight. This is symptomatic of decades of neglect in these programs and decades of us prioritizing other vocations at the expense of these types of jobs. So I don't disagree that there's need for reform. And I don't disagree. It'd be lovely to have more opportunities for those who are born and raised here to pursue those jobs. But those individuals just aren't here right now. Exactly. And so a lot is made of, the individual who came from abroad, who's working at Tim Hortons and pouring that coffee, and somehow that's denying an individual here a job. I guarantee you that person, more often than not, is highly educated and doesn't want to be working at Tim Hortons either.
Absolutely.
That's the job they took, because it was the job that was available.
Yeah.
But the real problem here is when you throw these programs away, we're not talking about jobs at Tim Hortons opening up. We're talking about businesses who are keeping our economy afloat through their innovation and technology programs, our healthcare system that relies on individuals' skills collapsing because we don't have the people to fulfill those roles. I'm sorry, I'm just going on, but
well
to me,
put.
this is missing the forest for the trees altogether.
No, absolutely, and specifically speaking about the LMIA program for a moment, I think once again the way the program is designed, and we speak to this in the pre-budget submission. The way it's designed with the CMAs and the sort of broad sweeping unemployment rates and not being sector specific, it incentivizes employers to sort of take advantage of this program to get around paying a livable wage. And it has become de facto, because it's so hard to properly investigate and do the audits and whatnot, it becomes this sort of check mark program, right? And I think CBC did this story not too long ago, but one of the biggest applicants for this program was Tim Hortons itself, right? There are companies that frankly do not need to hire foreign workers that can offer up jobs to Canadians, but they do the calculus in their head and they think, well, if
we can get away with this, I don't have to pay healthcare, I don't have to pay a living wage.
Exactly, and that's a problem. That's a real problem. So getting away or sort of throwing out this program, I think is asinine. I think reforming it is important, but I also think it's important to acknowledge that there's this gradual kind of maybe not so gradual anymore, but I think since Polyev kind of returned to his seat now, or returned to a seat in the legislature, I think there is this kind of gradual descent into sort of broad-based austerity and cuts to entire programs, in the same way that we saw with the conversation around the U.S. presidency with the Department of Education as an example. Let's not reform
Yeah.
this institution. Let's just get rid of it
Yeah.
entirely. Let's get rid of the deep state, right? Like it's a troubling thing when we think about just cutting entire departments or entire programs, instead of trying to make them better, because what that does is it normalizes this idea that we don't need an institution to solve this problem at all.
Yeah.
Right? That, maybe the market can solve this problem,
Yeah.
or some other sort of institution can solve this problem, but government shouldn't be in the business of doing this. And I think that's that really troubles me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think now I'm getting off the track here a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think we're going to see a little bit of this in the coming months.
Yeah.
Because I do think for Pierre Polyev,
Yeah.
he's got to figure out what his new identity is.
Yeah.
He is most effective when he's attacking.
Yeah.
And that's, I would argue, my biggest criticism against him as well, is
Yeah.
that he is not a man of ideas. He's a person who looks at something and says, "This is what I don't like about it,"
Yeah.
but not really great at offering solutions.
Yeah.
And I would argue, I think many would argue, this is what lost him the federal election earlier this year, is that he wasn't he didn't have the ability to pivot from a very effective attack of the former prime minister and Trudeau, and very effectively used his gift of oratory to come up with slogans and catchphrases and what have you, but found an enemy, attacked that enemy, attacked that enemy, attacked that enemy, and that enemy went away. And then when Mark Carney stepped into the role, Polyev couldn't pivot. He couldn't find something new to talk about. He couldn't be constructive. And I think ultimately that lost him in the election. And I think now that he's back, I do think we're going to see a little bit of this in the coming months.
Yeah.
As he's trying to figure out, what is this new identity? What can I attack now?
Yeah.
And I don't think he can attack Carney, because it just looks like sour grapes.
Yeah.
I think he has to find something new on which to unleash his approach to dialogue, which is to be critical and to appeal to his base, which is a populist base, which I think already is sort of predisposed to have a maybe not to be embracing immigrants and newcomers coming into this country.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
probably the nicest way to say it. So I think he's just trying to find what is that issue for him. So I'm kind of holding my breath on this one, because I don't know if, kind of waiting to see how people respond.
Yeah.
I don't know that this is really a policy position so much as I wouldn't be surprised if he's throwing stuff out there right now just to see what gets traction. Because I don't know that he has a clear political point of view right now. Yeah, I think he's trying to find it.
I agree.
My fear is that when he throws some of this stuff at the wall, it'll stick. And then this will become, rhetoric at a deeper level.
Yeah.
So I'm not panicking, but this does make me nervous that this is where people go, because, as I said, this is dog whistle stuff. This is not about temporary foreign workers at all.
No. And it should be noted too that
this is about othering people.
Yeah. It should, like, he stayed away from immigration as a topic during the campaign, and since he became the leader of the Conservative Party. I think partly because he knew it would be divisive, and that it was a dog whistle in some way.
Well, and quite frankly, the Liberal government wasn't doing well with it. And everyone kind of knew it. So he almost didn't have to call it out.
Exactly. But now I feel like there's this sort of kind of pivot towards a more a radical position on this, and it's concerning. I also will point out that he references the need to retain our program with agricultural workers.
Yes, that's correct.
Seasonal agricultural workers, which that is already a separate program. So it's interesting. Sometimes I think there's a little bit of I don't know if it's a misunderstanding on Polyev's part, but I do think sometimes we can make the mistake of thinking that, and we talked about this before, but all of these programs are one program.
Yeah.
But these are all separate issues, and they have separate agreements, and it's much more I think there's a real advantage to simplifying or oversimplifying some of these issues.
Sure, into a soundbite.
But yeah.
Anyway. The glib part of my brain went to immediately, Well, he's now an MP from Western Canada, so he has to be
That's a good point.
pro stuff that's pro agriculture. Like that's now
That's
part
right.
of his identity.
That's right. Yeah. So it doesn't matter that there's already a program in place.
He's
He
got
just
to
has
be
to
pro
say it.
farmer. He's
Yeah,
got to say
yeah.
something pro farmer.
That's right. That's right. Interesting.
So we've gone a little bit long, and
Yeah.
I'm glad we did, because I think this was worth getting into. I just want to wrap up though on this.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What are the next steps? You've talked about this. We want people to know about this.
Yeah.
How do people engage with this? How do
Yeah.
people share more perspective?
Yeah.
As I touched on, come January, no doubt we'll have the opportunity to do the same
That's
thing
right.
all over again provincially.
Yeah.
How do we get more people engaged in this great document
Yeah.
and future documents?
We're going to make this public,
Yeah.
and we're going to share it on our website, and we're going to send it to our members specifically, so folks know what we're advocating for, and so you can engage with it there. If you're interested in contributing going forward, as you identified, there will be a pre-budget consultation process for the provincial
Yeah.
budget in the new year. We typically welcome Minister Bethan Falvey in around February or so, or January, to do exactly this. And I would encourage folks to reach out to me at vsing@bramptonbot.com
Yeah.
if you're interested in sort of being apprised of those developments.
Yeah.
And I'll also say that next year there is a municipal election, so it's important for us to get ahead of that. But there is a municipal budget this year that we'll be doing some consultation on,
as well as a regional budget, which we're starting to do some outreach right now as well, to best understand, so we can make some commentary there.
That's right.
Around tax increases and essential services and downloading.
That's right.
So I said the federal and provincial because of the more formalized processes, but we also have similar engagements with the regional region appeal and with the city of Brampton on their regional and municipal budgets respectively as well.
That's right.
So for anyone who's listening who has an interest in this, reach out to Vijay. The other place is our Policy and Government Relations Committee.
That's right.
Which we will be discussing, I believe, these recommendations at our meeting next week. If anyone wants to join and listen in, there's an opportunity to do so there. Again,
right.
Reach out to you
Yeah.
if folks are interested in getting involved in our advocacy efforts a little more broadly.
That's right. Okay, great.
I think that's it. We've gone long, and clearly we had some stuff we wanted to get off our chest.
Yeah.
But I again, thanks to you and Hannah for doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's really important work, and I appreciate you going through it in detail and letting people understand where we're coming from. And I just want to emphasize one last time, all this is driven by the input we get from everybody else.
Yeah.
So we are the mouthpiece here, and hopefully we do an effective job of that. But everyone from the partners who we work with to shape the recommendations, the very businesses and subject matter experts that help us, identify what the priorities are, that's all critical work. But fundamentally, those core issues, you talk about 5 recommendations, they really fit into 3 big themes here: transportation infrastructure, affordability and accessibility with housing, and addressing labor market issues. That came directly from the large member survey we did last year, that we do every year. And so this is really a reflection of what our members wanted, and then figuring out how we can, advocate for things that we can be effective.
Yeah.
And so this to me is like just a great example of policy work. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you. And we'll be doing our BCI as well for this year very soon. And so if you are interested in contributing that way, please follow our socials, and we'll keep you apprised of when we're doing our new stakeholder survey. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sticking with us to the end of this one. We know it's a longer one. We hope you found it interesting. And on behalf of Vijay, myself, and the thank you to the Honey Badgers once again for sponsoring us. We'll talk to you again very soon. Take care.